Welcome to episode 10 of Awesome Women, and thanks for coming along today. Siobhan Daly, thanks for joining me. Welcome to Awesome Women.
Thanks, Evaleen.
So Siobhan, you and me have chatted before, you've done a few courses with us, and thank you so much for coming on to share your experience, because you only found out you were autistic very recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, last summer, last July officially, and June I copped. So less than a year, 6 months, been a busy 6 months learning,
And this question I hate because I always get it, but what led to you finding out you're autistic, or your identification, or your diagnosis, whichever? It's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a loaded question. It is. I'll take it. Out of the blue, actually, and not something that I had been preparing for or thinking about at all. One day last June, chatting to somebody who happened to be telling me about somebody they knew had found out they had her word sensory processing disorder, and I thought, what's that? Even though I should know because I'm a teacher, and you know that I thought I knew these things, and obviously I have learned since I didn't. So as she went through what sensory processing disorder was for her and what they had learned, I was taking all the boxes. Yeah, that's me. My sister was in the room listening, and she finished chatting away about that and telling her story. And I said, well, that's it. I have that without a doubt. I said to my sister, and she said, yeah, you do. So typical me fashion was going to wake up the next morning and make an appointment and get sorted. But sensory processing, went online, looked up all about sensory processing, what sensory sensitivities and issues, whatever was all about. And each time at the bottom of it was being autistic. And I thought, look at that connection. And then I kind of thought, you know what, again, teacher, 25 years, should know all these things, and thought, what is being autistic? So looked it up and did a bit of reading. And I think I got lucky. I just happened to find this piece that was describing me. And obviously I read stuff about being autistic before, but didn't know enough about it. But this is a bit different. What I read didn't necessarily go into behaviors. It went into the emotional side, which maybe I had never read before. And so that really, I just so connected with that. And it talked about things like feeling isolated in social situations and feeling confused in relationships and social settings, and feeling exhausted from trying to figure out the world. And I thought, oh, that they were all me. Like that's just all me. And you know, talked about, funnily, like then went on to talk about wearing comfy clothes all the time and trackies, and you know, not maybe knowing about fashion and maybe music and you know the trends and I thought, that's me too. Anyway, all of these things, just it was a lovely piece, and it described me. And from that very second I finished that piece, I said, I'm autistic. Turned to my husband and said, I'm autistic, and he went, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. And made few inquiries and booked an assessment.
And there you go. Bob's your uncle, as they say. Isn't that amazing? I found that too. When I started looking for it was people's stories. It's just one of the reasons why I started this series. It's people's stories that I connected with, people's experiences, because you know that you mentioned a list of behaviors is just meaningless. Like
I didn't connect with that. I didn't, even though in a sense it was still describing me. Yeah, it didn't hit home as much as the feelings obviously brought. When I was reading about the feelings, it brought back memories, whereas describing the behaviors possibly didn't bring back the memory. So all of I texted my sister and said, read this is me. And she's like, yeah, actually, yeah.
Oh, so yeah,
that's cool. So then that was I'll remember that day forever, as I will the day that I mean, it was important for me to find out formally, and that was another great day. I found both experiences very positive experience. That day when I realized this is what's been going on every day for the past, at that stage, 49 years. Yeah, it was a great feeling, I have to say, to understand so much so quickly. Obviously, I still have I'm still only 6 months into it, and it's a journey, but a lot made sense that day when I got to the end of that article. And yeah.
That's brilliant. And like your sister and husband had very positive responses, which was brilliant. What other kind of responses did you get from other friends?
So I have 3 children, young adults, and I told them, and same response. 2 of them went, oh yeah. I think not so much from the stuff that I just described, because that wasn't obvious to me, and so it probably wouldn't have been obvious to them, but I think it was more the I always would have used the word nerdy about myself openly, and I didn't connect any of that stuff with being autistic. I know, I would have read dictionaries, and if I speak Irish and I work in a Gael school, so I'd be looking up dictionaries, and an hour later I'd still be reading a dictionary.
Yeah,
I kind of thought that's maybe a bit nerdy. So they would have seen that side of me being autistic, and I would have chatted openly about that. Like I said, I love Irish grammar, and it's so exciting and stuff. So I think more that side, when I said I was autistic, they kind of went, yeah, you read dictionaries, you must be. So I think, I don't know what they have spotted a lot of the rest, but a lot of the rest of the stuff I didn't know was anything to do with being autistic. I mean, I remember during my assessment, I was asked about the phone. I said, I don't go on the phone. I don't know why phone. I mean, I don't think phones should exist. We should all just text, and WhatsApp's amazing. And I didn't know that anybody else in the world felt the same. I thought that was just me. I'm the only person who can't speak on the phone, and so they can't have known all the reasons why they thought I was autistic. So anyway, back to that. Sorry, I'm kind of going on and on.
No, it's brilliant.
They were funnily, actually, I have a daughter who's studying to be an occupational therapist, and she said, no, you're not. No, you're definitely not. And left it with her. And the night before that, I was going to have my first session of the assessment. I said, I have my first session in the morning. Actually, Mom, I've been thinking about it. Yeah, I think you are. So, that was good. It made it easier. Look, I mean, all my family were very much, very supportive, and very much, yeah, that does all make sense.
Yeah.
So very lucky and felt very supported, and loved through it all. So that was
that's a huge part of it, to have that support.
Yeah. No, I like, everybody saying to me, sure, nothing changes, and it's still you. Now, a lot changes from me, and then it does change in a sense. Well, a lot of positive changes, and for me, it's just being able to process and understand sometimes why things are happening, and that, yeah, not that I'm different, but that I'm able to look at things more from a more authentic point of view now.
That's it, isn't it, though? It's just kind of having that freedom and permission, really, giving it to ourselves to be more authentic and let go of that mask a bit. And when you say you hate the phone, what's the what why don't you like the phone? Tell us, Siobhan.
Oh, it's a no. I don't know. I can't process what people are saying to me. I can't make sense of it. I'm desperately trying to follow the conversation. I need to look at people's mouth to make sense of and I've spoken to a few people about this, and the whole having, I don't mean masking, but I mean having a mask during the pandemic has been really difficult for me, because I need to see people's, I don't even know if it's an expression, or is it just that I rely on,
Extra,
yes.
Yeah, a lot of it's lip reading or
yeah, I think there's a huge element of that. I haven't been able to fully work out really what I don't like about the phone so much. But I don't enjoy conversations with people on the phone.
Have you, so, you know, kind of like, would you now say to people, oh, I don't do the phone? Like, I actually, I mean, obviously, for work, even though I'm actually, because most of our stuff's online now, I don't have to use the phone. Whereas I had to for so long, everyone was booking it over the phone and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I suppose, but now I'm like, oh, it's so nice when you just don't want to talk to people some days. It's like, you know, for me, I think I visualize a lot when I'm on the phone to people. Like I see, I picture what they're saying, or I picture the conversation. So I don't mind so much being on it. I just find sometimes I don't want to be on the phone, and like that text and emails better. But would you now have those kind of boundaries, or would you have, with that understanding, would you say to people, actually, look, I'll text and I'll meet you and we'll have a conversation, or would you do that now, whereas you wouldn't have before, or would you have just said that before?
I think people, all my good friends knew that I don't like the phone anyway, because I mean, just a lot of the times I just wouldn't answer it. So, oh God, I can't do the phone. But I've been able to say now, part of the true me now and who I am is I just don't like it. So it's not that I don't want to talk to you. And so that's good. And because that makes it easier, because I don't then have the guilt. I used to feel so guilty. People think I don't want to talk to them, but it's not that at all. I love chatting to people. Well, with COVID, I haven't been meeting up with a huge amount of people. So as we come out of this, I hope that side of friendships and that will become easier, because I felt beforehand that you know, it was difficult. It added difficulties to relationships with friends, because it could be seen as lack of interest. Whereas now I do find I can say, it's just because I don't like chatting on the phone. I will text, and meeting up is perfect. Texting is funny though. I'm loving texting now, because I give myself permission for that to be okay. And I used to hear people texting in the same room as each other and go, oh, so horrendous. Because we're constantly being told, get off the screens, and phones are ruining relationships and conversations, but yet so much of me so often wanted just to text somebody, even though they're in the same room. And I don't know if you're like this, but I get the end of the day, there's no words left to me, that there's no space for spoken word at all. I just don't have the energy for it, and they're just all used up. And so I want to text people, even people in my house, and even people in the room with me. And now everybody knows why, and everybody, I can, boundaries, and explaining what's happening and giving myself permission to do that. And it's okay. It's not a bad thing. It's not that, you're relying on screens. Well, I am relying on screens, but it's okay.
But I mean, screens, I mean, this is the thing, they make screens and phones and devices make things much more accessible for a lot of us. It's not like everything's, they're all bad, or all good. It's like everything else, there's pros and cons to it. And it's like, and if it makes, it can actually aid communication for a lot of people, like you just said there. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can't verbalize, or then you can still communicate by sending a text. How lovely, like.
This is it, and it in fact, it can help enhance relationships, because what was happening to me is 9 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, I thought I turned into the most horrible person on earth. Like it was like a switch, and I just thought before, God, I don't really have I have so much patience during the day, and I have patience in my job, and then it gets to 8 o'clock and I actually don't like people anymore, even my own family. I really don't even like them after 8 o'clock. But now I know what's happening. I just had, there was no more left of anything, energy levels, anything. And now I know, I understand what's happening. And I understand by 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night, I might not be able to be in the room with people. I haven't stopped loving them, but I just don't have enough energy.
But you see, people get offended, I think, when you say you need your own space. But I think we need to, all of us need our own space. It's not a bad thing to want to be on your own, and like in our house, we're very much like, I just need some space. And we all know that it's not like, you know, an insult to anybody else. You just, if someone wants to be on their own, you know, because we just.
But I before, Evaleen, like I didn't do that.
Yeah. But I don't think we would either if I didn't know I was autistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is all stemming from realizing this stuff. And like teaching is so demanding. Like you don't get a break. Like you're on. You know what I mean? It's probably one of the only jobs where you're kind of on from 9 to whatever time you finish off. So it's constant.
So
you can't like, you know, it's not like working, you know, where you can turn off the phone for a while or turn off the screen or whatever. Just, you know, type, you know, do something else for a while. You have to be on all the time.
And then for me coming home as a mother, then by the time, you know, I was okay, I could manage about 8, 9 o'clock. The guilt was terrible. And oh my God, I don't have enough for my own kids, but it's great now because I have the choice and the permission, the personal permission. And, you know, my family now know I can say, I'm done. I don't have anything left. And they know it's not personal. And they know, it's easier for everybody.
Do you know what, there just something popped into my head. It's kind of like, well, then we're not really doing anything to make like workplace more inclusive for autistic teachers then, because what if there was, you know, if during the day you could not talk or communicate in a different way, or that would be that's something that would actually probably then mean that you would have more energy later on in the day, or more processing space, whatever way you want to word it. Be an interesting thing to try out, wouldn't it? Do you find I'm not going to talk to you now for the next hour. I'm just going to like
I just sit here.
No,
it's only 4 o'clock though, isn't it? We're okay. Yes, well, you didn't do it at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, or it's like, let's do some art now, and it's like I used to love doing that kind of thing. But have you found that, talking about teaching, have you found that like any of your, or has your teaching changed since you found out you were autistic, or your approach to teaching or anything?
Oh, absolutely. Everything. I mean, every aspect of my life, everything has changed. And a lot of what I did from July on is to look at education and teaching, and me as a teacher, and me now as an autistic teacher. Yeah, I mean, lots and lots and lots of learning and observing and looking. And yes, I've completely, I wouldn't say completely changed, but I think lots and lots of small changes at the minute. And, you know, I think last July, June, when I realized I was autistic and I wanted to change so much so quickly and stuff, and big changes. And I'm really starting to realize that maybe lots and lots of small changes, maybe eventually equal big changes. But I think, firstly, I love being in my classroom, and I love the whole idea of being yourself within the classroom. And I thought I was being myself within the classroom, but now I'm really, I think, to be honest, if I'm honest with myself, it is the place where I can be most autistic. Because they're so young. I teach young kids, and I mean, young kids are amazing, you know. So I might take my shoes off now in the classroom, you know, and the kids will say, "Why do you take your shoes off?" I said, "Well, I have sensory issues, and I don't like things on my feet." And okay, you know, whereas adults, and that's weird, you can't really be in your workplace with your shoes off. And so it's lovely. I can be a bit mad and crazy and eccentric and over the top, and it's very accepted. So from that point of view, I definitely feel that, and I think that's a really, really good thing, because I think a lot of what is missing in schools is, well, a lot of children can't, I suppose, positive role models, and, you know, there are a lot of neurotypical role models for neurotypical people. They're everywhere, and just at the minute, within the system, I suppose there aren't many openly autistic teachers. So for autistic children to see there's somebody like me, and even if it's not said, you know, and it's,
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing to be, I think it's probably why I worked with children for nearly 20 years. For now, I kind of work with adults more, but for me, it was confidence also. I wouldn't have had confidence I had with children, because you just feel totally different. They're so accepting and all that, like, and yeah, they are brilliant. And for me then, like, I was quite open as well, like you are, about being autistic, after a while. And so it meant that some of my kids who were doing speech and drama with me were, if they were diagnosed, I was talking to their parents, they were like, so I just told them, we were talking about diagnosis, whatever, and it was like, I just told them that they're like Evaleen. And I was like, that's so cool. Like that's just progress, and like that they have, someone that they can identify with, role model or whatever. And it's so important. And like, I mean, what there's definitely, I suppose, look, there's barriers everywhere, because I see this sometimes, people going, I can't come out and work because people will react badly. And it's kind of like, well, you know what, look, we have to, we're kind of feeding into the shame and the stigma. I understand there are barriers there. It doesn't matter though. It's not like if you're a certain thing, it's worse for you. I think like there's going to be stigma for all of us, and hiding it isn't kind of helping really. So I do understand that people do have barriers, and I understand all of that, because I wasn't exactly rushing out there to tell people myself either, but it was because of my own non-acceptance and my own kind of stigma and stuff I had to work through. But like, what barriers would you see kind of to teachers maybe coming out or disclosing they're autistic? Or would you see any in the system in general? Obviously not.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's possibly a profession where a lot of parents maybe would be happy to have autistic teachers in the school, and perhaps parents of children, of autistic children. I mean, I certainly would think my daughter's dyslexic, and I think if she had a dyslexic teacher would be amazing, because they'd be able to chat about it and stuff. So I think from that point of view, it must be amazing. I think there are barriers in the sense that would some parents maybe worry? Would it be maybe a concern for them? I think, look, lack of education is huge. Lack of this really struck me, and this is quite striking for me at the minute. I now know for 6-7 months that I'm autistic. I've not met another autistic adult face to face yet because of COVID. Well, that's part of the reason, also because I don't really know very many women that know they're autistic. So I can lose my train of thought here, but yeah, it's about acceptance. It's about living in a society where it's, oh, are you autistic or are you not autistic? Are you dyslexic or not? Are you ADHD? It's we still live in a society where it's not talked about, and we don't talk. I had never heard of neurotypical and neurodivergent up until 6 months ago. It's not normal speak and normal talk, and it's not something that a lot of people are comfortable with. It goes back to stigma, doesn't it? So I think the more it becomes normal everyday talk, and the easier it will be for people.
Because obviously I talk about neurodiversity, neurodivergent, all these terms all the time, because that's kind of, my business. That's the world I live in or have created, which is cool. But like, I was on the radio earlier, and I'm there translating, like I said, neurodiversity, and I'm like, they won't know what that is. And I find I'm trying to translate what I want to say back into the perspective, because you just know there's people listening who just think autism is this terrible thing. You're like back to that starting point, that I think of 7 years ago, when I organized an event, and it was like a revelation for someone I was talking to, and they were like I was like, autistic kids grow up and it was like, whoa, I never thought of that. And I was like, oh, like it's starting back there again. See, I forget, because I'm so used to just talking to people about different things, in this context, whereas you kind of forget that, yes, as you're saying, in the wider world, those words are like, what? Neurodiversity, neurodivergent, what do they mean? Which is, I mean, that word is around a long time. And like, as you say, the fact that you're teaching 25 years and, you think you know these things, and it's the same now with like, even, teachers just qualified coming out of teacher colleges. It's like a very tiny, like neurodiversity, like how you're neurology works, how you sense and think and feel and learn, how that's not a big part of a teaching course. I don't know. Like, this is how different types of people learn. So therefore, if you're teaching, you need to be accommodating for all of those types of learning. And like, imagine, that's not even part of, it's like, this is how you teach, this is how you control your classroom, this is how you know, all this kind of stuff. And it's not about actually really understanding how people's minds work in different ways or any of that.
No, and I mean, I didn't know all of those things 6 months ago. I mean, I mean, to a certain extent, but I'm learning now so much more on how to just noticing more, being aware more. It's a very busy job. We have 30 children in each class, which is an absolute disgrace. And to try and accommodate all the needs of every kid in a class of 30 it's really just it's disgusting and it's disgraceful. And I could talk about that for a long time, Jenna, that's not the point. But it's very difficult for all teachers to work within 30, of 30. And I know if there was 20 kids within a classroom, it would be an awful lot easier. We did more time spot things. But you asked about changes, and I'm so much more aware. I would have thought about, I knew to have sensory spaces with chill out spaces in the classroom, and we have a sensory room and all is lovely, but there's so much more to it than that. In the sense of, I would have thought, well, look, a kid gets half an hour in the sensory room, there we go, we're okay today. But that's not enough just to say that. And it's being aware of slight changes in children. Stimming is huge. I mean, I'm stimming away here, and I used to stim in my pocket. Somebody once asked me about stimming. I said, I stim in my pocket all the time. So I was obviously subconsciously hiding it. So I'm so aware of changes, more aware of changes within children, and letting that be so much part of their day. And children having much more choices where they sit within the classroom, and sitting on a windowsill for part of a lesson is okay, and taking your shoes off and maybe wearing a hat or putting your hood up.
It sounds like bedlam. Children sitting on windowsills, taking off their shoes, Siobhan.
But it's like, when you say things like that, it's not 30 kids doing it all in one go. And I mean, I have to say, hand on heart, we have made a lot of changes within the education system. We've got a long way to go. And maybe infant classes have changed a lot I've seen it over the last 10 years, but the training's not there. I didn't seek it out. I didn't look to find the training and stuff. So the whole sensory world of school is a nightmare for me still, at 50 years old. And so I'm very aware of sensory needs. I'm lucky I can dim the lights in my classroom, so they're dimmed for everybody. I'm turning down volumes and stuff, and just time out of the classroom. Let's just go outside and breathe and walk, or just run to here or there, because I can get very overwhelmed and overstimulated within the classroom setting myself. So I would hope I'm more aware of that for children as well. And I struggle with I struggle a lot with the bright colors and all this busyness of a school. So I'm very conscious of that with children. I don't know if I could have verbalized that before. I know teachers, my friends in school would have said, oh yeah, you kind of always did this when you walked into a classroom. And so now I know why and stuff. But I'm very conscious of children and how possibly sensory overload can happen a lot, but then not be aware of it. And, and being very conscious that children can verbalize what's going on. And quite often we say to them, what's wrong? What's going
I know,
on?
I just
They don't know.
Wait, well, my sensory system is a bit overloaded at the moment. I think that's so much, it's like we as you just said, like as adults, we didn't even have that awareness till now, till we kind of educated ourselves, talked to other autistics about it. How do we expect like a little kid to verbalize everything that's going on for them?
So yeah, it's a journey. I'm in the start of it in school. I'm excited to be an autistic teacher and to know that autistic children might see that as a good thing and is a bit of a help. And as you said, hey, she's just like me, or she does those things. She clicks her pen and she flicks her pen and she stamps her feet and she
normalizing it. I mean, the fact that I've got sensory issues, I don't like wearing shoes. That's just like, oh yeah, okay, someone does this. This is just what people do. Instead of making this big, huge thing about it, because kids aren't exposed to that, so much. And like things like stimming and all of that, like, it's and yourself, you can have teachers who understand the kids need to move and are like totally okay with kids using stim fidgets, whatever, whether they know kids are autistic or not. Children need to move in general anyway. We're not designed to sit at a desk and a table, for how many hours a day. Like when you think of it, it's just so irrational anyway to expect that, and to, as you say, to have 30 kids in a classroom, like just crazy. And that's the thing, it's not the kids. It's not the kids can't fit into the system. It's just like the system just does not work. And like, why have we got 30 kids to one teacher? It's like, well, because someone somewhere is cutting costs. Like, it's not about education. Like, it's like, this is like, and you have children then traumatized because someone somewhere is cutting costs. Like, that's wrong. That's wrong on so many levels, but I guess we won't start talking about the education system. We'll be here for another. But tell me, before we go, how do you think, like, your own experiences of school as an autistic girl who didn't know she was autistic, how has that kind of impacted your teaching? It probably did before you even knew you were autistic, I'd imagine.
I do know that now. I do know, looking back, that it did. It absolutely had an effect on my teaching, and I was looking out for the kids who maybe struggled in school, like, and I don't mean academically, I mean all of the other, because I mean, to me, it got to the point where the academic stuff wasn't really important at all to me. It was survival, and that became the number one thing, was the survival, and just obviously being in sensory overload a lot of the time. But again, I think that even wasn't conscious, because primary school and secondary school was just such a overwhelming sense of confusion, absolutely not having any idea what was going on, not being able to keep up at all with all of the rules and regulations that everybody else seemed to get from they were born. Some kind of microchip put in their head.
A lot of the time, it's because I've had conversations with people about this. A lot of the time, it's not that like, we don't get things. It's just that they're actually utterly ridiculous. That they make no logical sense, and it's very hard to grasp something that's illogical. And I think we're naturally kind of questioning stuff, and then you're like, but why would? And we kind of get hung up on like, but why are you doing that? Rather than just following the rule, we're like, but why is everyone doing this? Why do we have to wear uniforms? This is nonsensical. Why do I have to look like that person? Like, there's just so so. I think sometimes we kind of say, I'm not saying you didn't get it, but like, it could be a reason why you didn't get it. Is that actually... Absolutely.
A lot of the stuff seemed pointless, and a lot of that, absolutely. Why can't we wear a ring in school or earrings but there was just so much more than that as well. So there was all that massive sense of justice, and there needs to be a reason for this. We can't just have rules for the sake of rules. And yes, definitely all that on top of the whole thing, just trying to cope with everything else that was going on. And I think, I find it difficult being in a big school, and corridors and assemblies and just massive. I think it wasn't about it, like it, in the sense of it was just about so many people being together for so long, and just not knowing where to go and what to do, and that was really, really difficult. No, and what struck me was I don't think anybody ever knew that I struggled through school, and so that's really frightening and terrifying for me as a teacher, is to look out for the kids who aren't obviously struggling, and you know, the quiet kids. I became the quiet person, but I didn't feel internally quiet, but I presented as quiet. I think a lot of situational mutism was definitely happening with me. I didn't know that until recently, but there were times when I was just frozen and paralyzed into absolute complete just I can't talk here. I can't, it's too unsafe. I have no idea what's going to happen when I don't. So I'm just going to stand here, fawning. I mean, all the books were written about me, and so I perhaps wouldn't have known and to look out, I suppose, in the training we get as teachers. Who are we? You know, an awful lot of the focus is on the more obvious struggling, and
I find that it's on behaviors. It's where the child is interrupting the class, where it's getting in the way of the classroom management, education, as some people call it. But I mean, that's neither here nor there, because that's just, again, it's kind of trying to make sure someone doesn't do this thing to disturb this ridiculous process that we put in place to educate children, which isn't working for life. Like, I mean, the fact that you're talking about survival, and I know this, and is it that, you know, surviving school, like there's something seriously, radically wrong if that's what we're talking about. And it's not like, you know, and that's what kids are trying to do, literally survive school. Like, that's not what school, like, if you read, I'm sure, you know, kind of like what schools are about. And if you read your local schools, any of us, you know, Google our local schools, it's not going to mention, here's how your child can survive school. You know, that's not the language that's used. But I think we need to get real, and we need to actually understand how much damage that schools are causing all children, not just neurodivergent kids. It's not, I mean, it's not set up for any child. It's not how human beings are supposed to be, really, is it? You know, so I mean, kids are in flight and, you know, basically if you're trying to survive something, you're going to be in, you know, flight or fight all the time. So, you know, or those of us who go quiet or hide, or, you know, I mean, I just have these vague feelings of like feeling lonely and anxious, and from school, from primary school, you know what I mean? I loved learning. I loved most of my teachers. I had fantastic, you know, connections with some of my teachers. I had definitely an autistic teacher. Well, I mean, I'm saying she's autistic, but I had her for 3 years. And, you know, so that was amazing for me. And I, you know, so I loved that side of things, but the whole, you know, playing games, or, you know, wondering, oh, when am I going to be picked, or PE, stuff like that. It was really a lot of social anxiety, you know, that, and again, like, that nobody would have picked up on, because they're fine.
Yeah, because you're the good girl.
Terrified of reading in front of people. What are these
me too.
About me while I'm reading this, which again is social anxiety. I didn't know that until a few years ago. I was like, you know,
I mean, we've a long way to go. We really do. I mean, I would love to see class sizes reduced, just to give kids a fairer chance from day one. You know, I mean, can you imagine 15 in a class as opposed to 30? You know, where we really have time with children, and we really, you know, I really believe that classroom management obviously isn't such a big deal, and I do think, through no fault of their own, an awful lot of time is spent on classroom management just because of the amount of children with you know, in the room. And it shouldn't be. And, you know, we're trying our very best to build relationships, and you know, to show, to look at the children, and for them to see us as people and humans, and, you know, be it neurotypicals or neurodivergents, it's all, you know, that's a lovely ideal world where we have time to do that, and sit down and have the chats, or have quiet moments, or have walks. And there is curriculum overload, there's no doubt. I mean, I think that's changing. I was just looking, even before we come on here, about draft proposals for, you know, more time for well-being, and so so hopefully,
I know, but see, even that, like, you can't schedule time. See, again, it's still coming at it from this broken system, systemized. Let's schedule some time for well-being. Okay, now you have an hour for well-being in the week. Now that's that box ticked. That's not how well-being works. Well-being is making kids,
it's all day. Yeah, it should be.
You know, so it's like, again, it's like just the system itself is broken. It needs to be just.
Yeah, I think a start is definitely, we know it is. I mean, definitely we know it is. And, you know, look, we are, I think there's an element of trying to make this better. But at the end of the day, if the autistic teacher doesn't even know she's autistic, you know, we've a long way to go within society in general, regardless of even just the education system of, you know, I find it quite frightening, not upsetting, that I can get to 49, 50 just, and to just start knowing now who I am and what's going on and why all of these different things happen and stuff. So it is difficult for children, and it's difficult for, it has to be difficult for children. That's the experience of so many autistic people, is looking back and think, this was difficult. This was difficult for me to be in all of these situations all of the time. And I mean, I'm hearing it, and I think that for me personally was the academic stuff. I got there in the end, you know, and I scraped through with what I needed to get, but again, no more than yourself, for somebody who's so interested in learning, I mean, passionate about it, excited about it, it just became unimportant because there was far too much else that I needed to focus on just to get through the day.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a massive achievement to actually, you know what I mean? It's like all you had to do, just, you were surviving, you were literally trying to get through this with as least little damage as possible. And then, you know what I mean?
But look, you know, autistic people are talking now. We're, you know, not that we are, but you know, yes, we are, and there is more talk. It's not anywhere near enough. I mean, it's not at all, and I know that. But I just think the more we talk, the more you do this kind of thing, Evaleen, the more training that is available, the more we just make it normal talk and normal everyday talk, the better, you know. I mean, and I find, again, I'm saying to people, and you know, saying even the parents in the school, I'm autistic, and people say, Joe, I'm kind of thinking maybe about myself, or I'm thinking about, and so just to get people thinking is even, you know, some kind of start.
A huge start. That's a huge start. It's just getting people thinking, you know, as my friend calls them, mind bombs. Just literally putting these ideas out there, and people going, oh, I never thought of it like that. Siobhan, thank you so much for such an interesting chat. We definitely held back on slating the education system. I would love to have you back some other time, and I know you know, we've talked before about like behavioral approaches and stuff like that, so maybe we might do a chat on that sometime. But thank you so much for taking part, and thanks everybody for listening. Let us know in the comments what you think of our chat, or if you have any questions, and thanks very much for listening. Thanks, Siobhan.